Am I a neuron, or experiment using my GPS data to explore the world? A few years ago, I used GPS tracking with an app called Moves, and where I plotted my data with Movoscope, as you can see on this picture. The orange line represent moving by transport, so you can see a lot of traveling across the highway, 2 flights, and the city where I used to live in, Groningen. Here I zoomed into a few weeks of data, and you notice that my network of traveling was rather repetitive. I always took the same routes, went to the same spaces, and met the same people. A strongly repetitive pattern with a strong structure. I was especially embarrassed because I always wanted to see the world and discover it, but there were streets next to my door, next to my house that I'd never visited. In fact, if you look at this picture, I hardly knew anything about Groningen. So I started to do an experiment where I made it my goal to visit every street of Groningen by the end of the year. I wanted to explore the whole city and see what's there to find. So I started very enthusiastically in the first months. I took different routes to work using my bike and went for random walks through the city. The next months you can even see more enthusiasm. I walked more and more through the city and to places I've never been before. I discovered quite some nice things, new restaurants, weird buildings, parks and playgrounds. But over the months I started to be a bit more exhaustive, time consuming and maybe even pointless to visit everything. Next month that even a bit more. And at the end of the year you can see I failed my goal miserably. My network was still quite repetitive and many places were still a mystery for me. It's weird to realize how many places in the world I haven't visited, just in Groningen, but let alone in the world. But overall, this experiment brought me a few lessons which were quite nice. So first of all, variation and exploring and experimenting made me resilient. Because I went on exploring different routes, I found new places, new shops, new people. Breaking from my own habitual pattern could make me find alternative routes, more effective routes, and completely new things. And whenever a route was blocked somewhere, I knew a quick way around it, or to a different place, because I learned different ways and more spaces. Over the months, my enthusiasm reduced in exploring the new paths, especially on the days when I was tired or stressed. I didn't do any exploration and fell back to my most efficient routes. It costs energy to move and to learn new things, and if you don't feel like having energy to spare, it just feels useless. So I usually only started to branch towards new and extra paths when I had energy left. Like in life, we are creative and resourceful when we have a large skill set of large network of people we know, making us capable of doing many things, but sustaining such a network also needs frequent maintenance. So when you're stressed and tired, some connections might die and you return to a smaller network of less branches, but stronger connections. So together we can see we only move for a reason. We only move if we go somewhere, get something in return and go back. We usually don't just move, we don't use movement as an end, but we see it as a means for something else. Even when we take a nice walk through the forest, we're often quite busy with our destination, instead of the path itself. Which is a nice analogy to life. So as Alan Watts also so Alan Lee put it, you could always focus on the goal you want to reach, but at your deathbed you might realize that the goal of life was the path itself. So last thing I couldn't help but notice is the resemblance of my traveling path and the branching patterns of a neuron. Neuroplasticity is the changing of connection and behavior in response to new information, which is about learning new things and doing things differently. This exactly resonated with the things I just described. And now I only looked at my own neural path. But at the end of my paths, I connected with my friends, colleagues, families, and who all have their own branching patterns and exchange information with me, but they also do that with others and to people who are living in the street next to me, which I never visited. So if you would visualize all these paths of all the people at once, it's almost like we are a big cluster of neurons connecting to each other, branching towards each other, and making these connections, forming one huge network that is structured in its communication and its rhythm over time, which we call society. Well, overall, I think it was quite a nice experiment, although I was always a bit hesitant about the analogy between like personal life path and these neural paths. But becoming aware of complexity science made me more aware and confident about the universal way that energy travels in these branching patterns, albeit in rivers, lightning, road networks, and galaxies. And here I showed that for humans it isn't that much different. So to conclude, I'm not a neuron, but there's definitely some similar processes going on, but on different scales. So I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.